Happy post-Chanukah, conclusion of Chanukah to everyone. I'm starting a little late tonight. We're just going to continue, be a little shorter share today. Just want to continue at least some of where we were holding over here in this amazing discourse. We're learning about the two elements of the lamp. And last week we discussed how a lamp has two components. One component of a lamp is that it elevates earth to heaven because the materials of the lamp give away, surrender themselves, especially the wick burns itself up. And that represents the substance of the material world surrendering itself to godliness, or in the physical sense, the physical substance surrendering itself to the fire. And what does that mean in terms of the spiritual soul? It means that we have a body and we also have an animalistic consciousness. And part of our Jewish experience and part of our worship to God and our service to Hashem is that our physicality should dissolve itself in its quest, in its seeking for godliness. Primarily that is experienced in prayer. And as we discussed last week, it's primarily our animal soul, which symbolizes the wick, that is rooted in a place that is enormously high, because the animal soul comes from the broken shards, from the sparks of holiness, from the world of 63 that we discussed, the supernal infinite lights that have fallen down. The same idea we've been talking on the Monday night classes about Esau having a higher source than Jacob. Our animal soul has a higher source than our godly soul. And when our animal soul gets triggered with a yearning to ascend, when it gives up, as it surrenders its energy, remember we spoke last week about the big animal, the Shekhinah, what's called the name of Ban, the name of 52. She consumes the sparks. Remember we spoke that she consumes 1,000 mountains. She eats the grass of 1,000 mountains, which that means, remember we said that's Kel Shakai. Kel Shakai equals 99, with the hidden letters inside of it, equals 999, which is 1,000, which is the name of God of the world of creation, that sustains the world of creation. So that represents all the suction that the Shekhinah suctions up every day from all the sacrifices that we make. So in our own world, it means that God created us as consumers. We need to be consumers. We can't live without consuming. We have to consume. What do we consume? And in order to live, we have to consume. The human being has to consume animal and vegetation, which the animal and vegetation grows and develops off the mineral, which is the substance of all material existence. So when the human being lives off all these things, gathers all that together into himself, his or herself, through eating, one form of consumption, and through all the other necessities in life, like clothing and home, all these things become now part of human life. That's an elevation. But when human life surrenders itself to the divine, when we in prayer yearn for God, when our food that turned into blood, we burn those calories in fervent prayer, what we're doing is we're consuming all that light into the Shekhinah. And the Shekhinah then takes all that energy, and the Shekhinah is, as we discussed in last week's class, a tiny little crumb of a crumb of a crumb of a crumb of God's life force that is trapped in the world. And when she yearns upward, precisely because of all these sparks that were now digested by her, because it enters into us, we're all part of the Shekhinah, that fuels the Shekhinah like rocket ship fuel to shoot the Shekhinah up, all the way up beyond all the Sefirot, all the masculine Sefirot. This fits very well also with what we were learning on the Monday night class this week, when we were learning that Dafka Malchus, precisely the Malchus, rises up into Keter, higher than all the other attributes. That's what we're learning. We're speaking about 2025 this year. I mean, I'm assuming that everybody learned listen to all the classes. But they're really exciting classes. They were worth listening to. So all this energy creates this powerful surge of intense yearning of reunification. And that's one element of the lamp. It's an upward thrust. And last week we learned that's primarily personified in the Shabbat candles, Shabbos candles. When you're looking at the Friday night candles, you're looking at a thirsty candle, at a flame that's longing, at a wick that's burning itself up, that is losing itself, where somethingness is metamorphosizing into nothingness. And the nothingness means pre-existence, and ultimately into God himself, who is the ultimate pre-existence and therefore not defined by any definitions. That's the thirst, that's the longing. That's the upward motion. But we learned that there's another element to candles. It's the Chanukah lamps. Chanukah lamps is the opposite. Capturing a piece of heaven, fire that is light. This world is a world of darkness. Fire, which is bright and light, is above the atmosphere. It's heaven. And what a lamp does is it attracts a piece of heaven to come down and to illuminate. That's mainly the illumination of the soul. And that's mainly the function of the oil. The oil is primarily what keeps the fire down. Because if you would have just a wick burning on a fire, it would burn out very quickly. You would have an escapist type of a fire, a runaway fire. If we don't have oil in our life, our spirituality is one that wants to escape this world. We'll soon see what the oil is. But the oil is what anchors the fire down. Yes, we're seeking heaven, but if we can't escape to heaven, let's bring heaven down here. And that's God's intention. And that's why the Chanukah menorah is not so much about the yearning upward, more about the illumination outward. That's why we put our menorah outside. And the miracle of Chanukah was not the miracle of a wick. It was not the miracle of the fire. The miracle of the oil. The oil is what saturates. And this is what we're going to learn today. So I assume that everybody that's tuning into the class today sat through the last two classes. And when I say the last two, I don't mean the last two that I gave. The last two Thursday nights, or actually not 2 Thursday nights, 3 weeks ago Thursday night, and then 1 week we had Fabring and Yuta's Kislev, and then last week Thursday night. So you're like right on top of where we're holding right now because I'm not reviewing today. And that was the sum total. Usually the review in this class is an hour and 20 minutes. And then we start new. But today, that's the extent of the review. Chaim. Oh, I know why I looked at my phone. I wanted to dedicate tonight's class. I'm sorry, I'm going to dedicate it right now. Tonight's class was dedicated by, that's what I think. I opened my phone to find the dedication. Here we go. Tonight's dedication was in honor of Sarah Fega, Bas Chaya Bunya, in honor of her birthday. May Hashem bless her with Shnas Bracha and Hatzlacha, with every blessing in the world, beyond. Happy birthdays. Yes. Thank you. And now, let's take a look. What's the oil? He says, this is on page Mem Aleph. In Torah, I didn't even make you a copy yet. But if your heart is, so in the book of Sefer Yetzirah it says, if your heart is racing, shuv le'echad, return to oneness. That means if you are experiencing this rapture of the soul, don't give in to this quest, to this yearning of allowing your soul to depart from your body and melt away into the infinite light. Don't allow that. You got to slam down on the brakes, come to a screeching halt, stop your soul, and turn around, bring your soul back down. Take all that energy that was driving you out of your body, away from the material physical world, and for a short period it's okay, but then don't go too far in, because then you're undoing what God did. God didn't send your soul down into this world so you should run back to him. God sent your soul down into this world so you can be an ambassador of light. You can be a being that will shine and light up the world. So of course, if you don't want to escape the world, that means that you make peace with the materialism of the world. That means that we make peace with the physical materialism of the world. And then we have no light. Our light is extinguished. What are we shining? We're just, the soul becomes materialistic like the body. What kind of inspiration are we giving to the world? Of course, we need to experience and continue to have this powerful surge and desire to unify and have an appreciation how general the beauty of the spiritual realms, and then the understanding how the spiritual realms are just a mere tiny little glimpse of light, and what we really want is God that's beyond the limitations. And then within God itself, we understand that the godliness of the creations, the godliness that is vested within the worlds, is just a crumb of his light. Like we discussed last week, they're the tiny little hair. All of God's energy coming to the world is just a bit of hair. Like the energy flowing through one. Imagine a human being who's an incredible, accomplished scholar, and you manage to get a little, which is nice, you get a souvenir from him. You get one follicle, one hair strand of hair. It's great. If you have Einstein's hair, I don't know, was he bald? Could be, I'm not sure what Einstein had. No, he had a lot of hair. Einstein had a lot of hair. I don't know in the middle of his head, but at least around the front was, he was very hairy. So you get a little bit of his hair, it's really cool. But what kind of Einstein brilliance are you going to have in one bit of hair? It says excess of the brain power goes into the hair. So you can sit there and and suck and try to, take out the energy of the hair and think you'll be the next Einstein, but probably won't happen.
Hair is hollow, right?
It's hollow. Hair is hollow, so it has a little tube, and there's some cells of his hair. Yeah, so you want to do an Einstein implant, right? So you'll one day be very smart, but it doesn't. It's only a fraction of a fraction of a crumb of a crumb of a crumb. So the soul appreciates that is nothing. And it yearns for God himself. But you realize that when you want God, the only way to connect to him is to do his will. And what does he want? He wants that you should shine your spiritual enthusiasm and your excitement to other people. That they too can pick their heads out of the muck. Because imagine a wasted life when we live a life in which God asks of each and every one of us to be his partner. Imagine that. God wants us to be equal to him, to be his partner in this project. And how wasteful is it that all we do, and God forbid, when a person doesn't know of anything else but the material pleasures of this world. Fame, money, honor, and that consumes a person, and and other than that, what a shame. So therefore, it's simply a kindness and a goodness that God wants us to do, is to share our light with other people. Which means bring them, instead of running away, become a teacher, become an inspiration. Light up the lights of other people. Ignite their souls. Make their lives meaningful. Make their lives deeper. That's the point of the second point, the second element of a lamp. Bringing heaven down to earth. Chanukah menorah. So that's what he says over here from this in the book of Sefer Yetzirah, which is one of the earliest Kabbalistic writings. Even attributed, according to some, to Avram Avinu, to Abraham, was the one who was the author of the book. As it says, if your heart is racing, don't give in to your desire to melt into the Ein Sof. A spiritual quest, if it goes unchecked, and if you're a really, 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 really ambitious soul, and a super sensitive soul, the excitement and the fervor to to cleave to the Ein Sof. And as you get closer to the Ein Sof, the magnetic pull of the Ein Sof can literally disconnect the soul from the body. Like we find that there were two sons of Aaron died because they got sucked up in God. Basically that. Nadav and Avihu, they literally got sucked up in the ecstasy. The verse says so. B'karvasam lifnei Hashem, they came too close to God. And literally he sucked them up. Like a flame that gets sucked up in a big blaze and it goes away from the wick. But that's what they did is considered a sin. Because that's not what God wants of them, even though it's the most beautiful way to die. But God didn't create you to die. He created you to live. And that's the reason why we say in Sefer Yetzirah, if your heart is racing, shuv le'echad. Return to make oneness. What does that mean? Return to reveal oneness of God in this multifaceted or multiplicable, what's the word? No, okay, I'm not going to say why. I can't say the words, but okay. What is it? Multiplicable. No, I'm looking for... It's okay. Shuv le'echad, bring down the oneness into the many. Hamshacham l'mayla l'mata, bringing down from above downward, Pchinas Chanukah. That's the idea of Chanukah. So even though every lamp, the Chanukah lamp and the Shabbos lamp, contains within itself both of these energies, upward excitement, a rising upward and a descending. However, the primary message of Shabbos candles is a racing towards heaven. The primary message of Chanukah candles is illuminating, bringing the light down. Ki apsula, like we said earlier, Chanukah stands for Chanu, dwelling. Chav Hei is Ko, is Malchut, bringing the light down into time and space, which is Malchus. Ki apsila hu kava maher, because the wick gets burnt out very quickly. V'gam eina me'ira kol kach, and it's also not so luminous. What's the main factor that creates a sustainable light to illuminate the darkness? That you're turning on a lamp, you're putting on a lamp to illuminate the darkness. That is primarily created v'hainu ayidei Hashem, and that's what the oil does. Second component of the lamp, the component of the oil. And this idea is, and that is wisdom. Wisdom is compared to oil. Or oil, wisdom is compared to oil. We know that shemen is Kabbalistically, mystically, shemen, which is oil, is called chachma. And what's chachma? Chachma is the Torah. And what the Torah does is, the Torah enables us to connect every aspect and every entity and every limited creation and aspect of time and space and infuse that with godly content. So no need to exit creation. No need to cancel time and space. But rather time and space itself can shine with God's bright light. I don't need to run away from my body. I can allow my body to be saturated with oil. And if my body is saturated with oil, the divine presence, which is the fire, will illuminate in the physical life that I live. When I fill it with the wisdom of Torah. When I fill it with the instructions of Torah. When I organize my life, every facet and every piece, every little aspect of it is directed and guided by the will of God and the wisdom of God expressed in Torah, then it too is godly. No need to escape. Actually, God finds it, gets a kick out of expressing himself in the tiny little fragments of life. The big, enormous, ginormous, infinite, transcendental vastness of the Ein Sof, okay, doesn't tickle him, doesn't excite him, because that's what he is naturally. He's really cool when he creates all these tiny little fleeting moments and fleeting entities, and yet they too are revealed that they express him. And that's what he finds to be really interesting and exciting. But that can only be through Torah. The wisdom of the Torah brings God's light down, and it's exactly what oil does. Oil saturates everything, and when you put a fire on it, keeps the fire shining there. Not escaping, but sustaining, keeping the light present. So a Torah life is the only thing that is sustainable to keep God present in your life. So, for example, if you're a spiritual person, but you don't study Torah, you're going to have sporadic flare-ups of enormous spiritual excitement and yearning and very, very deep moments. But it's not going to stay. Instead, you're going to crash. And a lot of times in that emptiness that comes after the light is gone, you're going to fill it with a whole lot of darkness and a whole lot of what we call addictions and stuff like that, because your soul is thirsting for another union with God, but you can't sustain it. Can't be in a transcendental escapist state all your life. You're just going to end up with a big vacuum of space, and all the material things you're going to do to try to fill that emptiness will never fill it. So you're just going to, what it causes a person is to become obsessed with whatever it is that the obsession is, because you're seeking that high that you got from the spiritual, which you can't hold on to. So not only is a life lacking of Torah, even if it has spiritual experiences, like not only is it limited, your connection to God is limited, it's also going to lead to corruption. Because we find a lot of times that precisely the highest souls end up with the greatest crashes. And the secret, and what they're lacking is they're lacking Torah. And that's why every free moment of your life is to study Torah. Torah helps funnel the oil. And the more Torah we learn, the more we realize we can be godly while we are exactly who we are. In our world, in our life, in every aspect, in our eating, in our drinking, in our shopping, in our material, every aspect of the physical life becomes incredibly divineful. I don't know, I made up that word right now. Meaningful. That's the presence of Torah. And that's the oil. So he says, the amazing thing is, there is Torah in everything. Torah addresses everything in the world. There isn't a thing in the world that Torah is not present in. And since Torah is oil, that's why we find physically it says, well, there is oil in everything. A plant has oil. Our bodies have oil, physical bodies, yeah. Oily skin, oily, right? There's oil. There's oil in animal food. There's oil. There's fat and oil. There's oil in plants. And there's even oil in minerals. Everything has oil. Because kulam b'chachma asisa, God created everything with chachma. God created everything with wisdom, and wisdom is oil. The Torah is the inner wisdom of God that's in everything. So when we discover the Torah of everything, then we illuminate God down here, and that keeps his fire burning. So prayer is needed. Prayer is the excitement, the fervor, picks us up and elevates us above, and gives us vision, gives us the ability to. But then through Torah, we anchor everything back down. Inyan Hashem menu b'chol advarim. is in every in b'chol advarim yesh shemen. In everything there is oil. Ki yesh. So he explains, because there is chachma in all worlds. There is chachma in Atzilus. That's one level of chachma. That the higher, there's 10 sefirot, so the highest sphere is chachma. The chachma the bria. There is chachma in the world of bria, which is the world of creation. At shenasa chachma dasiya, until there is chachma in the physical world as well. Hi Torah shelafanenu. That's the Torah that's in front of us. Hamalu beshes begashmias, where the Torah is enclosed in material, physical things. And the Torah, halacha, that's what halacha is. It addresses every avenue, every element of life. There is Torah of how to do business. There's Torah of how to be married. There's Torah how to have a kitchen in your diet, what kind of foods, how to prepare food, and so on and so forth. There's Torah regarding our clothing. There's Torah regarding birth. There's Torah regarding death. There's Torah regarding the person after they pass away. There's Torah regarding waking up in the morning. There's Torah regarding... There is no area in life that Torah does not fill. V'yesh Torah the Bria. Now there is also a spiritual Torah. We shouldn't think that the Torah is just a set of laws applying to the physical world. It exists in the higher worlds as well. And he proves that. Shalzeh Amru Kayim Avram Avinu Olav Shalom Torah. The sages tell us that Abraham fulfilled the Torah at Shaloi Nitna, before it was given. Now it cannot be, he says, that Abraham fulfilled the Torah in the physical form. Why? Dahainu, because the mitzvahs were not given yet in the physical form. Dahainu koydem eslapshusa ba'olam hazagashmi. Before the Torah took on, became enclosed in the physical world, God infused the Torah into the physical world at Sinai. Before that, the Torah was not infused in the physical world, but the Torah was in the heavens. So when we say Abraham fulfilled the Torah, he fulfilled the heavenly Torah through his various forms of meditation. Elachain, and therefore Kayim mitzvahs tefillin. That's why Abraham was able to fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. Hagam shaloi nichtev adayin, even though it was never written. What are tefillin? Tefillin are the boxes that Jewish men wear every day on their hand and on their head, leather boxes. Now those leather boxes contain inside of them scrolls. Those scrolls are scrolls of the Torah, in which are describing events that happened much after Abraham, a couple of hundred years after Abraham. It describes the exodus of Egypt, which Abraham predated that. So Abraham's tefillin couldn't say that. And if you don't have that, you don't have tefillin. So what does it mean that Abraham fulfilled tefillin? He didn't do the physical tefillin. He fulfilled the tefillin in its spiritual form. Adayin, it wasn't written yet, Kadesh Li, which is the first Torah portion, Kol B'chor, or the Kadesh Li Kol B'chor, which means sanctify to me every firstborn, which is all a derivative from the Exodus. That's why the firstborn, because God killed off all the firstborn, and the firstborn of the Jewish people was spared, therefore that's why every firstborn is holy, and we have to redeem him. That's what the Torah speaks about in Exodus. But Abraham lived before that. Abraham lives in Genesis, before Exodus ever happened. There wasn't Yetzias Mitzrayim. It says Abraham kept the entire Torah, including circumcision. But Abraham was 99 when he was circumcised. So how did he fulfill circumcision until he was 99? He did it, but he didn't do it physically. He did it a spiritual circumcision. He circumcised his heart, spiritual his heart, his emotions, his consciousness. Before God instructed him to do it physically, he did it spiritually. The concept of Mila is removing the foreskin in order not to give energy to the outside forces, to the dark forces. And Abraham fulfilled this commandment above. He stopped the extraneous forces, the forces of darkness, of deriving energy from holiness. How did he do it? Whatever. However, all we need to do is remove the foreskin from our body, and it's done. Abraham did it through some spiritual type of a service. Because at that time, this mitzvah was not yet enclosed in the physical. Ma'isa hamila, the action of circumcision. Mamish. And this is the meaning that he did it until it was given. Before it was given in the physical, it was already, the concept of the mitzvah was in the spiritual world. But the main drawing of the oil. So now, what is that saying? That oil exists, as he said earlier, in everything. In every level exists oil. But the point of here, oil is that oil comes down wherever, in every possible existence, the oil is present. Torah comes down. It's the divine, it's God's wisdom in all of existence. But he says the main drawing of the oil, it's not just the oil is to uncover the divine wisdom that is within creation. Say, maybe, okay, so Torah means explore, dig deep, and reach the scientific depth of every creature and every being. When we say scientific, I mean beyond the science of matter. Discover the godly content that's in every creation and every being, and that's the godliness of it. No, because that's limited wisdom. The main element of the Torah is above the world. Torah is God's wisdom that is infinitely higher than creation. And he's going to bring that there's two levels of Chachma. There is Chachma Ilah, the higher Chachma, and Chachma Tata, the lower Chachma. The lower Chachma is the Chachma of Malchut. The Chachma, the wisdom of Malchut is the source of creation. So that's the wisdom of God that's within creation. And that too is in everything, because everything is created with wisdom. So it's in everything. But there is a much higher wisdom called Chachmi Ilah. Chachmi Ilah is the wisdom of God, the level of wisdom in which the Or Ein Sof dwells, the infinite light dwells, not the limited wisdom that's within creation. And that's the real element of Torah. The real element of Torah is not that when we uncover the wisdom, the godliness of every element of creation, then we're living the best time and space life we can live. We're attaching our physical material lives to God within time and space. No, we have to realize like this. The Torah, in essence, is a wisdom and a knowledge that only God knows. The Torah is the subject matter of Torah. On the level of higher wisdom, the subject matter of Torah is utterly divine. It's unlike what we think that the Torah is an instruction manual for life. That is the worst misinterpretation of the Torah. The Torah is God's private genius, in which if the worlds were never created and the worlds would never be, the Torah still exists as Hashem's entertainment. It's only that after God created the world, God takes His Torah, His magnificent, unfathomable, unknowable, utterly divine Torah, and lowers it down to us into creation. So when we're learning the Torah, even though we are learning the laws applying to interpersonal relationship, matters of legal disputes, in which the Torah is teaching us how to resolve that dispute in the most godly way. True. But That's not really what the learning of the Torah is about the argument of these two people to resolve, where the ultimate objective is to resolve a conflict in this world in the most godly way. That's not it. The main element of this argument that the Torah speaks about is something utterly unfathomable and unknowable that doesn't relate at all to creation. It relates utterly and infinitely and absolutely to God's imagination in His infinite light. It's only packaged in a package that deals with two people arguing, and one guy says like this and one guy says like this. In other words, if we were to see 1 second what the Torah really means, we would literally faint in 1 second. And I don't even believe we would be able to be woken up from that faint. We would pass out from absolute being shocked and baffled on the tiniest Torah law, because it has nothing to do with what we think it is. It's infinitely beyond that and infinitely beyond the infinity that we think it is. Unimaginably high. And yet, God has, in His mysterious ways, packages it into worldly things. And He says that's the main element of Torah. Not the lower chachma, the higher chachma. Chachmi Allah, the higher chachma. And in this chachmi Allah and in the higher chachma, God Himself resides. And that's the fire we're bringing down to the world. We're bringing down to the world the innermost of God Himself through Torah. That's the oil. The ikr hamshachas Hashem, and the main oil. Remember we spoke Shabbos by the Kiddush. We were speaking over that the shemen is the essence. There is wine of Torah. There is the bread of Torah. The oil of Torah. The inner element of Torah as it is utterly godly, utterly divine. There is the higher chachma and the lower chachma. Chachmatata, the lower chachma, Chanukah min amidos. The lower chachma, which we said is malchut, and malchus is divine speech, and we know that level of wisdom is receiving from the emotions of God, because there are 10 sefirot, chachma bina das. Then there are the emotions, and then there is malchut. So malchus is receiving from divine emotions. So that chachma is remember we were talking about Monday night? Not Monday, we didn't do it on Monday, we did it on Tuesday this week. That chachma, the chachma tata, the lower chachma, is what we were talking about when Yehuda says to Yosef, Bi Adonai, you give me life. So the Yesod, which is Yosef, is higher than Malchut, and is channeling the light down into Malchus. The emotions are giving light. But Chachmi Allah, the higher Chachma, L'mayla min amidas, much higher than the emotions. Now, what kind of, and therefore now, and where does it register? The higher Chachma is associated with what we call Chachmi Allah, the higher Chachma, with the Yud of God's name. So we know in God's name there are 4 letters, Yud, K, Vav, K. So the higher Chachma is Yud, and the lower Chachma is Malchut. And in between, which is Hey, and between them is Yud, K, Vav, K. So 4 letters. The Yud is the higher Chachma, the Hey is the Malchut, and the upper Hey is the Bina, and the Vav are the 6 emotions. Translating that into our experience, because we know that because we're created in the image of God, we have those letters in our psyche as well, in our soul as well. So how do we connect to the lower Chachma? We connect to the lower Chachma through simple obedience, because the lower Chachma is kingship, is Malchut. How do we connect to God as being a king? We are a subject. Simple obedience. Simple obedience is referred to as many times as fear. Because in Kabbalah's oil, in In accepting the yoke of a king, there is a fear element. He's the boss and we're his subjects. But that's called the lower fear. Above the lower fear is how do we connect to God's emotions? Through our emotions. Primarily through what? Through love. So above the hay is the vav. The vav is called love. And our end, it's our love to God that bonds us with a higher transcendental godliness, God's emotions, sometimes referred to as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then we are higher than that. How do we connect to the God's Bina, to the intellectual faculties of God, above the divine emotions? We can say through Torah study, yes. But primarily it says, again through love. But a higher level love. Not, there's two levels of love. There is human love and divine love. The higher love means an excitement that's godly. In other words, suddenly we flare up with a fire that is triggered by God, not by us. See, the lower love comes from intellectual, from understanding, from getting ourselves excited. Then there is a higher love, which is just a pure excitement. But above that love, how do we connect to the Chachmi Allah, to the supernal Chachma? From the higher Chachma comes the higher fear. So the way it works is like this. Fear is on the top, love, and fear. Lower fear, lower love, higher love, higher fear. The highest level is higher fear. And what does it mean over here? Fear over here doesn't mean like a negative element of fear. Fear over here means that God is so powerfully sensed in our soul in such a conspicuous, real way that we can't even move a limb. We become completely silenced. We become completely abnegated. And that's really, really, really where the Torah emanates from the higher level of Chachma, which instills in the person the higher fear. And that's why the sages say, if there's no wisdom, there is no fear. This is a level of fear you can never, ever attain through our own meditation on God's greatness. It's almost like God has to bestow that fear upon the person. It's God has to like walk in on your soul. And that's what creates this fear. And where is God walking in on your soul? He's walking in on you. Imagine a king walks in on you and you suddenly can't move a limb. God walking in on the person is through Chachma, through Torah. Because God is present in Chachma, the higher fear. Now, obviously, we are very, very low souls. We're from the bottom of the barrel. And we are very, very, generally, I'm not saying everybody, but generally, all the people in our generation. So we're very, very desensitized. So we study Torah and we don't feel the feelings that's supposed to go along with it. But the great sages, when they studied Torah, they attained this level of fear. They literally could not move their finger suddenly in the middle of learning, because suddenly it was sensed in their soul the power, the enormity of the Ein Sof. And when you realize suddenly that you're literally, God is everywhere. He with his entire being is present and right in front of you. And there's nothing but him. You can't move. Completely knocked out and become absolutely nothing. This is the way Moshe was. Moshe lived like this every second in his life, in the higher fear. We're learning the Mashiach daily Maimah. We're learning how King David was. Today's class, I spoke about that. In this level of non-existent. This is this level, a higher level of fear. And the beautiful thing is that this is not an escapist type of an experience, quite on the contrary. This grounds us, because You know what it does? It fans it silences the flames of the soul. Because the higher love is driving us to escape the limitations, the boundaries, to seek to tear ourselves away, to go higher, to lose ourselves in God. But when we're hit by this level of fear, we're muted, we're silenced. And all we can hear is God, and all we can hear what is God wants. And then we hear God's whispering in our ear and he's saying, I want you to put on tefillin. So we go and we put on tefillin. God says, your neighbor needs help with their battery in their car. They need jump, go help them. There's an old lady around the corner who doesn't have food. I know you're busy with your ecstasy, but I care that she should have lunch. Go help her out. So that's when we surrender and do God's will, especially from this higher fear. That's the downward motion. So Chachma Tatah Chanukah min Amidos is taken from the Midos. Chachma Elah Lamayla min Amidos is higher than the emotions. And he brings over here the 4 levels. Tchila, fear, which is the higher fear. Rechimu, love, which is the higher love. Rechumi, love, which is the lower love. And Dechilu, and fear again. He calls it Dur Rud. That's abbreviation for Dechilu. Dechilu is Aramaic, means fear. And he says like this. Yidatata, the lower fear, Miyachudatata b'malchus, comes from the consciousness of Malchut. Remember we spoke on Tuesday's class that Malchut is called Ko. Ko means something like this because it's like a frosted window, we said. Remember we spoke on Tuesday night? And it's like a frosted window. It doesn't allow you to see clearly that God is and there's none but Him. And that leaves us a little bit wiggle room. It leaves us a little space. And because we have a little space, in that little space, it protects us from the higher fear. It allows us to feel more ourselves. So we have fear because we recognize that God is the boss. He's the creator of everything. But we're not knocked out in the fear. That's the lower fear. When we feel this, we have obedience. We do His mitzvot. So miyachudat atah b'malchus. That's the lower fear. Ma'ashenkin yirei Allah, but it isn't the case on a much deeper level. The higher fear, it simply means the difference between the lower fear and the higher fear is in the lower fear, the person experiencing it is privy to a much narrower truth of God. You're standing in a much, 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 much darker place. And therefore you feel the creation so much more, you don't feel God. You feel the God, obviously you're fearing, so you're in front of God, but God is still veiled with many veils. The higher fear, all the curtains are moved. And you're actually standing in front of the ultimate truth. And when you stand in front of all the truth, boy, oh boy, there's a knock the socks off you. And that's the point, the total nullification. So, Yirei Allah, the higher fear, but Chachmi Allah is in the higher Chachma. But, he says, Visharsha, and the root of it, the root of the higher fear is not even Chachmi Allah, which is the Chachma, which is the higher sphera, the highest attribute of Atzilus, but even deeper than that. The real root of the higher fear and of the oil that we're talking about, Torah, the real root of Torah, is not in the revealed Chachma, but in the concealed Chachma, which is the Chachma that is in Keter, where it's even beyond Chachma. And there the brilliant, infinite light of God is shining. That's the real source of Torah. V'sharsha moyach stima, the concealed Chachma. Shehu megvura, the atik that is stemming from the gevura of Atik Yomin. Shemesham nimshach hasayros bebchinas yud gimel tikkun edukya, which from there comes the hair of the 13 strands of hair of the beard. And from this very, very lofty level of Chachma and Keter, the source of it's a little hard to understand over here, and I was going to check this up, but I didn't get a chance to really investigate this. So I'm going to read it now without much explanation. I can wing it over here, but I would be doing an injustice. And I was already stuck on this last week. We didn't teach it last week, but I was stuck on this last week, and I was trying to figure this out. I was puzzled, and I said I'm going to figure it out this week, but I didn't. So I'm just going to move through this over here, and Be'ezus Hashem, when we start the next piece, which we're going to learn next week, and we're going to conclude the discourse, Be'ezrat Hashem, because next week hopefully we'll be able to start on time. I'm going to come back to this to just discuss a little bit what he's saying over here, because hopefully by next week God will help me and I'll figure it out what he's saying, but I don't know what he's saying over here. What does he mean? Avol Makairim V'Sharsham V'Meichtem Avaloy Abadatzilas. The Makairim V'Sharsham from what? From the strands of the beard? The strands of the beard are in Keser. What does he mean, the Makairim? I don't know. Okay. But for the general theme that we're learning, we could understand further. That's the Chachma in Keter, in the crown. Api Kabbalah Ramak, according to the Kabbalah of Ramosha Kerdavu, the Ramak. Api Kabbalah Arizal, but according to the Kabbalah of the Ari, it's even higher. The real source of this Chachma is in Malchus before the Tzimtzum, in Malchus of Ein Sof. So he's bringing over here a dispute between the Ramak and the Arizal, a difference of opinion regarding the source of the Torah, I think, whether it's in Chachma of Keser or all the way in Chachma of Ein Sof, Malchus to Ein Sof. It probably relates to some of the arguments we were learning about in Ayin Beis, about the Ramak and the Arizal, about the 10 Spheres Agnuzos. But again, I need... Now, there is a mimer from the Alter Rebbe in Tuf. I'm going to tell you, for those of you who might not have patience to wait till next week, you really want to figure this out, and you can read Hebrew yourself, and you're familiar with Chabad terminology. The same discourse over here is recorded in the book Tuf Reish Samaches, Chelik Beis, and it's over there. Over here, the mimer is very short, and over there, it's written in a very long and elaborate fashion. And my intention was to read it today and decipher what he's saying over here, but I didn't get to do it. So you might figure it out before I get to it. So I'm just telling you a place to look and where you can learn and try to figure out what he's saying over here. Whatever it is, this is very, very, very high. And this incredible, lofty source is drawn into the Torah that's in front of us. Begashmias. Meaning, the highest, deepest quintessence of the Torah that is rooted in the deepest, highest levels, even before the Tzimtzum, even before the first contraction, all the way in the innermost of the infinite light. That level of Torah is present in the physical Torah that we learn. Meaning, when we learn halacha and we're learning arguments and disputes or laws pertaining to everyday living, which seem to be so down to earth and so simplistic and so minute and so seemingly unimportant, if we might say. Yet, inside every single one of these laws lies the deepest, innermost Chachma Ilah of God. In other words, if you would crack open the law that you're learning, it can be the most amateur part of Torah, the most simplistic part, dealing with a simple law pertaining to who knows what. Yet contained in there is Chachma Ilah on the highest levels of Chachma Ilah. The higher Chachma. Not Tchilasam B'Seifa. Because the beginning is wedged in the end. Daika. And we see this, and as it says in Shema, it says, you shall love God your God, and then V'hayu advarim ha'ela, it should be these words, Asher anochi mitzavacha, that I am commanding you. I means the very I, God himself, in the innermost of the crown, mitzavcha, I am commanding you. Hu ba'yom la'asoisa, is in the Torah when it deals with the most physical. And in a sense, the Torah in the physical form is even rooted in God. There's even more in the physical Torah than there is in all the spiritual levels of the Torah. Because there's a special rule that the beginning is wedged in the end. So in the middle levels of the Torah as it is studied and interpreted in the higher worlds, they might not possess within them these deep secrets. But in the Torah, in its most physical form, that's where it's packaged. Mashenken l'mayla, as he says, he doesn't say might, he says it explicitly, which isn't the case above. The Torah descends through all worlds in a state of evolution, from one level to the next level, and in each level it gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and not necessarily everything of the higher level is conveyed in the lower level. It gets like watered down. But when the Torah comes down into its lowest manifestation, its lowest form, no more watering down, the essence suddenly appears. That's the cool part of the Torah in its physical form. And therefore, the Torah as it is above, since it is stemming from the Malchut, Malchut is very, very far from Keter. Light years and light years away from Keter. From the hidden Chachma that's in Keter. Avol Basiya Gashmias. But the Torah in its material form, Nimshach Shaloi Kederech Ishtalshalos, does not come down through an evolution process, but rather it skips the entire chain of all the worlds, and it just is delivered as it is into the material. So what we're really getting over here is that we should really, really, really hold dearly the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Rambam. We should learn it and learn it and learn it, 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 and never stop. And learn it again and again, every law, and kiss it every time we learn it. Because it's diamonds of diamonds of diamonds. And although we can't extrapolate its light currently, until Mashiach comes, but once Mashiach comes, we're going to be very happy we learned it and absorbed it. Because it's all going to open up in our soul. That element is the oil element of the Torah. It's bringing the flame of the Ein Sof, the light of the Ein Sof, into our lives, into a manifest state through studying it and then through doing it in the mitzvahs, following through on the instructions of Torah and making that real in our life. That's when we are drawing it all down into the Gashmias. Okay, so I have my homework to do on this little piece. I'm going to try to crack this open Be'ez Hashem this week, and then next week we're going to conclude how this all relates with Chanukah. Although it's going to be a week after Chanukah, but that's okay. We're going to keep the Chanukah going for another week. I was late today and unprepared today because I had an event today for a nice couple of hours leading up to this. It was an important event of a dear friend of mine. And so therefore, usually that's the time I prepare, and I was a little preoccupied, very preoccupied. So I hope I will be forgiven for that, but at least we got a chance to learn a little bit. And Be'ez Hashem next week, we will make up for the shortness and the lack of research of tonight's class. Okay. Everybody be well and a very happy last lights and last licks of Chanukah. May Mashiach be here now.